Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Interlinked, the official podcast of Neo Tokyo, powered by Shrapnel and Crypto Unicorns.
Brace yourself for impact, crypto gamers. I am reporting from the Sacrifice Zone. STX3 just wrapped up and it was chock full of new features. One of those new features is the addition of weapon skin fragments. Scattered all over the map, in drawers, in boxes, on your dead opponents, there were weapon skin fragments that you could extract and then combine to create new weapon skins and bring those to the marketplace or strap them onto your favorite weapon and hop back into the Sacrifice Zone. They also added Metal, their off-chain point reward system, and some killer map updates. Can't wait to dive back into the Shadow Zone on June 24th for STX 3.1. Introducing Crypto Unicorns, a play and collect game by Laguna Games. Breed, battle, and collect your favorite unicorns. Crypto Unicorns has recently successfully migrated to the Xi blockchain. The Xi blockchain was custom developed leveraging Arbitrum technology to address the needs of Web3 gaming at scale. Stay tuned to the end of this episode to learn all about Crypto Unicorns' Play to Airdrop campaign, which just kicked off on July 1st. Learn all about this and more at www.cryptounicorns.fun. Huge shout out to our sponsor, PLaya3ull Games. They are inspired by gamers and funded by their community. They have a epic game on the Epic Games Store, a third-person shooter called Nexus. Hop on in there and check that out. They're also currently selling nodes, so if you're interested, check that out at their website, playable.games. That is a 3 instead of a B on playable. Now strap in for the rest of this episode of Interlinked.
Today, we have the wonderful gentleman, Mr. Michael Wagner from Star Atlas. How you doing today, sir?
I'm great, guys. Good to be back with you, Ben, Nick. Looking forward to the conversation today.
Absolutely. Really appreciate you coming back. You're one of the friends of the pod, one of the pod favorites. Definitely want to keep this going. As always, the main man, the myth, the legend, Mr. Nick Crypto Atheist. How are you doing, sir?
Dude, I'm doing good. Just started off day one of a little vacay, which just means I work from a different location. So stoked, beautiful day. Excited to dive into some Star Atlas.
Love it. All right, let's jump in. Just for a quick refresher for those who may not have caught the very first episode that we do, maybe you can give us just like a 60-second synopsis on what is Star Atlas. Catch us up.
Yeah, always super hard to do because we have a lot going on, but highest level, what we're building since 2021 is a AAA space exploration MMO, building that in Unreal Engine 5 on top of Solana. We have deep integrations of blockchain into virtually everything that we do. And so it's not only NFTs, it's the game currency, it's the governance token, but going fully to the extent of on-chain gaming logic, which means we're extracting or abstracting game logic from the engine, building that on Solana. Fun little fact I'd like to share is we're currently, with a relatively small daily active user base, producing 15% of the daily transaction volume on Solana, the non-vote transactions. So there's a lot happening within the game. We do build across multiple game environments. So we've got the Unreal Engine MMO product. We're also building out a browser-based version of the game. We call that Sage, Star Atlas Golden Era. This is more top-down RTS MMO on a persistent map. We'll get into some of the specifics of that, I'm sure. And then we currently have a mobile app in development as well. This is a fitness app. It's kind of a spin on the move to earn segment of the industry. In our case, it's move to progress. And you take a crew member, you load that into the app, you go on a walk, run, bicycle ride, you're leveling up the crew member, you're collecting gear. And what's cool about all of this, and why I emphasize the on-chain logic, is because we really have synchronicity across all of those different environments. It doesn't matter if you're engaged in Sage or if you're in Unreal Engine, you're actually interacting with the same game logic. So you see any actions replicated across all of those. So fully interoperable, interwoven, single universe, just with a bunch of different ways to experience that.
Absolutely love it. Now, one of the things I did not realize was how much of the daily transaction volume of Solana is you guys. Maybe talk us through, how did you get there? What does that actually mean? And maybe tell us the journey of how you were able to ramp up your transaction volume.
Yeah, and there are pros and cons. I do want to note that obviously these transactions are being processed by our users, which means they're paying transaction fees. Now, the upside is that the transaction fees on Solana are incredibly low, less than a penny. Now, earlier in this year, we had gone through some network instability and priority fees became an issue. And so we've seen transaction costs go up a little bit, but since then they've come back down. But effectively, all of this transaction volume is coming through probably 20 different on-chain programs that we've built to date. And so everything from like our two simple gameplay mechanics, faction fleet, faction claims, these are more passive styles of using your assets to produce Atlas or to produce resources. Our governance lockers, so the Atlas locker, POLIS locker, staking mechanisms, our marketplace is fully on chain. We built that from the ground up. And then the vast majority of the high transaction volume is through Sage. So Sage started as Sage Labs, and it was really a developer environment that we were working in to play test some of these on-chain mechanics. We ultimately converted that into a front-facing product that users could interact with. And so when you get into Sage, you connect your wallet, and you'll start by forming fleets. So you have to excuse me, you'll have to import or deposit ships into the Sage program. That becomes your asset base at one of the central space stations. You form fleets and you can start to explore the map. Now, everything from fleet formation to movement and coordinate systems, mining, resources, crafting items, combat systems coming in the future, inventory management, and localized inventory. All of these are on-chain systems. So when a user forms a fleet, that's a transaction. When they move to a new starbase or a region in space to start mining something, that's another transaction. Mining is a transaction. So what we have right now is between 1,500 and 2,000 daily active users in Sage. Now, it's not a huge number. It is actually a pretty promising number for anything in Web3. A lot of games out there right now are seeing like 10 daily active users, so we think it's encouraging. Part of the draw to Sage specifically is it's where our play to earn economy lives right now as well. So in the current iteration of Starbased, players are crafting all of these compounds and components and then depositing those to upgrade starbases. So across the three different factions, users are essentially competing to upgrade starbases faster than the other factions, which will give them benefits and advantages in the future. Now, the result of that is when you participate in upgrading one of these starbases, you get loyalty points assigned to you, and then every day you get a distribution of Atlas based on the amount of loyalty points you contributed versus everyone else in your faction. And so that's largely driving its popularity right now. It's just to be honest, I think it's not the most engaging from a gameplay perspective, but the fact that we've had this sustainable, functional, attractive economy running now for almost a year in Sage, again, I think is promising because economics and tokenomics is one of the, I think, weak points that we've seen in Web3 games historically. And so a lot of good progress coming and a lot of iterations still to go, but that is driving a lot of that user transaction volume on the network.
Yeah, and I think it'd be interesting to like share with the audience like some of the lessons that you guys learned from some of the first iterations of like play to earn that you integrated into Sage.
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, we've gone through a few different evolutions of the economy ourselves. The loyalty point system wasn't in place originally. When we first launched Sage Labs, this was early September of last year. The core mechanic was something that we called golden tickets and the golden carnival. And so what players were doing was actually going out and they had options to craft and redeem for game assets like ships, depending on, and each one had a separate recipe depending on the value of the underlying asset, the size of the ship, the class of the ship, etc. But what people really flocked to was crafting these golden tickets, and then on a weekly basis, working with hedgehog markets, there would be a raffle. And so you could contribute all of your tickets We had a big loot pool. We distributed something like $2 million worth of game assets over 8 weeks. And that was the first version of the economy. We were distributing value through distributing these game assets. It didn't even have an Atlas emission associated with it. So that kickstarted everything. From there, we evolved into what we called request for resources. And so users were crafting RFRs, and that version of the economy was the RFR had a certain Atlas value associated with it. So you could take the RFR and sell it into the emission pool on our marketplace, and you would get 1 Atlas or 2 Atlas, I think it was, for every RFR you craft. And so everybody was going out and trading resources. We're actually seeing pretty impressive numbers on the marketplace on peer-to-peer exchange of all of these SFT resources in excess of $1 million per month. Now, I want to point to that because one of the things longer term that we're working on is establishing an economy that's really more consumer, call it consumption production based, wherein the people that are producing items in the game are able to specialize in some way, establish a niche, and focus on creating an item that they sell to other players as a means of generating income. This is a divergence from the hyperinflationary models that games have employed in the past, where sure, you've got this token emission curve and you can reward people with, say, 1,000% per year. Inevitably that always fails. So we've always been far more conservative on the emission side, but the most sustainable path is saying user A mines hydrogen and produces fuel out of that. User B mines copper and produces ammunition. Well, they need to trade with one another because they're not producing every resource they require. And so now you have users that are generating income by selling to other players. That's zero net emission. That's a net positive for the economy in the long run. And so the fact that we're seeing $1 million in assets exchange hands on a monthly basis, that is effectively play to earn. Somebody is producing that and selling that to someone else, and that's producing $1 million per month in player value, right? So that was the RFRs, that was part two. And now we've moved into this LP system where the token sinks, the resource sinks are upgrading starbases. So you're mining all of this stuff and crafting these items, dumping it into starbases, competing with the other factions to level up faster, and you're producing your Atlas through your LP share on a daily basis. A lot more to come in the future on all of this, especially when we add combat systems. Those are going to be big resource sinks as well. There's risk factors involved there. There's going to be asset burn just as a result of ships being destroyed while carrying cargo, stuff like this. So I think it's all pretty exciting future for the economy. We're in the earliest stages of it, but it's performing quite well so far.
I was just going to ask a quick clarifying question. When the resources like enter the sink, are these removed from the ecosystem, or because of the nature of the resource, are they sort of regenerative?
They are effectively burned. Now, in terms of regenerative, the current model for going to a starbase or going to an asteroid and starting to mine, those are unrestricted. So there's no limited quantity. In the future, it will be, though, and then there will be some regeneration rate on when those resources respawn in the future. As of now, they cannot be exhausted. So all players can be at any place and mine an unlimited amount. But we have 50 plus econ levers in the game, so we're balancing how much is going into the ecosystem on a fundamental level, and we can kind of manage the inflation of the supply just using those levers. And we also have a lot of data and metrics around what the consumption or burning of those resources are. Now, once a user deposits it into a starbase, it is effectively burned. So that's what we're balancing right now is, what's going on with stockpiles of resources? How are they being utilized? Are they being saved for the future? Are they being sold directly on the marketplace, or how otherwise are they being consumed? And we just make sure that everything kind of balances out so that we have sufficient sinks in place to manage for the raw resource inflation. Now, the bigger question is around, say, Atlas, the game currency and the incentive token. As we've gone into this new model of LP, what we were able to do, and this was the long-term vision, is establish a fixed daily rate of Atlas that goes out. When we were working with RFRs, for example, it just depended on how many RFRs were crafted on any particular day. That was the upper bound of how much Atlas could be emitted. Now that we saw days where it was between 9 and 12 million Atlas going out, and right now we're at a fixed emission rate of 6 million. And one little caveat to that is that as these star bases get upgraded, that faction gets a bonus to Atlas emissions as well. So, the more star bases you upgrade, the higher the emissions. But it's relatively small compared to that 6 million fixed rate. I would just think that's important because it's all players competing over a single pool, and we have stability in the amount of Atlas that goes out into the market every single day.
I want to shift the conversation a little bit to something I think you guys do really well, which is working with other groups and other projects, and both from the perspective of internally, like you have DAOs that are being created that are like sub DAOs within Star Atlas, and their whole mission is to just be awesome at the game and craft things. And I was looking at one of the newsletters that goes out, and they're claiming like they're the number one ship manufacturing guild, and the whole. So people are like, really getting into it in an interesting way. In addition, I just saw, a recent partnership announcement with, I believe, Honeyland. And it just seems like you guys are doing a really good job of like working with other projects, both internally and externally, and other people that may not be like core team. Can you talk about your perspective there and maybe give us a blueprint for how you guys are thinking about this?
Yeah. On the DAO side, our guilds, the guild ecosystem in Star Atlas is really robust. We call them DACs, Decentralized Autonomous Corporations. That was a little play on EVE Online, by the way. EVE Online, your guilds are corporations, right? And so we put the decentralized spin on that. We launched our DAC platform earlier this year where you can go register on chain. You can set permissions for the guild. You can start recruiting new members, assign rankings to them, place a description of your guild and the type of activities you're interested in. So you can use that as a recruiting mechanism for new players. You're talking about Afia. They put together some really great Flipside dashboards. They do a weekly newsletter, some recaps over, the goings on across Star Atlas. And the area they want to focus on in the future is manufacturing. They are really heavily invested into mining resources and crafting ships. I would note right now we don't have an official ship crafting mechanic in the game. That's going to be quite an extensive and elaborate system where you have to get licenses and you have to level up to a certain amount. You of course have to collect the resources, and then there will be the crafting times or the manufacturing times behind all of it. And before we roll that out, we really want to have our permanent ship destruction mechanic in place, and that's in the high risk zone. Again, you need the burn, right? If we're going to let players just craft ships and we could just see this infinite supply of ships, well, how do you eliminate those through time? It's through the high risk zone where the best rewards are there, but if your ship gets blown up, it is gone, right? So that will come out later. I'm kind of digressing here, but the guild system is quite robust. And then in terms of partnerships, you just mentioned Honeyland. So that was something that we announced last week. Part of the crafting system that we do have built out in Sage, again, going back to where we're at with Starbased, is we added something called meta crafting recipes. So these are third-party items that people want to deliver or drop in our game. You can almost think about it as the next generation of airdrops that is Sybil resistant to some extent. And so we worked with Honeyland. They said, here, we want to give you 100 of these NFTs, and it's a Gen 1 egg in their game. And we're also going to release a badge, a Star Atlas Honeyland badge that players in Honeyland can equip on their avatar. And so what we did through our econ department is we'll first talk to them about what the value of that is, how much do they want it to be worth. We structure a recipe around it, and then we make that available in Sage. And so our players and any of their players that come over are able to mine resources, craft this item, redeem it, and then go use the SFT that they redeem from us to collect the items from Honeyland. And this is just the first of many. We have probably 15 or 20 of these partnerships lined up right now. We also worked with a guild that is called the Super Phoenix DAO, and they're raising capital right now to purchase the Super Phoenix Titan from us. These are our $5 million assets. We've sold 4 of them effectively so far this year, not at face value. In full transparency, they are discounted from the $5 million price tag, but nevertheless, it's cool the things that they want to do with it. And we released a poster for them as well, purely cosmetic. Now, what I see there as being one of the big advantages is not only are we able to cross-pollinate, a pun that I used with Honeyland, but we are able to cross-pollinate with other ecosystems, other games, commingle our users. We can distribute items and help promote those games, but this also creates additional item sinks and resource sinks in our game, because you have to go collect the resources and use them to redeem for these craftable items. And what's cool is that that creates more and more competition for how these resources get used. And that's specifically valuable for people that are focused heavily on that loyalty point LP redemption loop, where they really want the Atlas. And the less people that are contributing resources to Starbases because they're focused on crafting a ship or crafting these meta crafting recipes, that means the less competition on the LP side. So that's where we'll start to see, I think, the economy really flourish, is when there are so many choices that players have to make, and so many options available to them, that everybody is really satisfied because they're focused on the thing that is most interesting to them. And that could just as well be character progression or these cosmetic items, more so than earning Atlas every single day. You know, I think the financial incentives are very positive mechanism to come from Web3 gaming, but it's not the only thing. The entertainment is very powerful as well. And I think a lot about our MMO, and as that hits mainstream, very feasible that a lot of those players would be happy to come in and spend $5 or $10 a month, so they don't have to mine fuel, right? They'll just pay somebody to mine the fuel for them. And the reason this all works is because our studio, Automata, isn't sitting in the middle saying, you have to buy the fuel from us. We're the only seller of fuel. In fact, we don't sell fuel at all. The only way you can get it is by buying it from another player. So that's this consumer producer economy again. People that are focused on the entertainment side with disposable income will pay the grinders to do the work and make their gameplay experience more fun.
I love that idea, how the reserve currency sort of the entire economic structure is really that fun factor. That's what really gives the value to all the other pieces in the economy.
Yeah, it's funny, Nick, because people like the narratives have shifted over time. You know, I've been in the space since 2013. Won't go that far back, but even since 2021, when we started building Star Atlas, as the bear market hit, there were a bunch of people out there saying, like, just build a fun game. Who cares about the financial incentives? Who cares about the tokens? And in a way, I mean, I certainly think that the entertainment value needs to be there, but that's not the only thing. Like, the financial incentives are equally as strong, and that's the benefit that we have with the innovation in this technology, is that we can couple fun with real financial incentives, real world economic implications. Like, it does take both. You need both, I think, to have a really successful Web3 game. But certainly, if you have an entertaining product, that's going to attract the users, and that only makes the economy more robust.
And the people willing to buy those products from the people who are in there through the financial incentives. So you can definitely see how that's such an important piece of the overall puzzle.
It is. It is. It's kind of the cold start problem as well. So the decision that we made, I think we talked about this on the last show, but I think it's no secret we ran into some financial troubles in 2022 as a result of the FTX fraud, having some of our treasury on deposit at the exchange. And what I knew is that we needed to get a minimum viable product launched in 2023 that had some level of traction. And if you were to go look at the current URL is based.staratlas.com. That's where Sage Starbased is at right now. But if you go look at that, it's probably not the most visually attractive thing you've ever seen. It's 2D. It's a 2D RTS, and your ships are little arrows, on screen. But it's been incredibly successful because the economy, because we have this um, massive, passionate community behind us already, and what we gave them was the feature they wanted, which is here's how you can play and earn in Star Atlas today. And so they're able or willing to overlook all of the like say the aesthetic and the visual elements because they know we're also building this incredible MMO in Unreal Engine 5. But here's the thing that we know you want right now. It's the financial incentive structure. We gave that to them, and we've had good, stable daily active users since launch. And it's been a good foundation for us to continue to build from and generate revenue and keep expanding.
Now a word from our sponsors.
Introducing Creo Engine, a next-level Web3 gaming ecosystem that connects gamers and developers in a Web3 gaming hub. Hop on their Creo Play platform to check out current and upcoming titles like Evermore Nights, Slime Haven, Creonia Metaverse, and Arcade Fest. The team has earned the endorsement of the chairman of Indonesia's People Consultative Assembly and earned a 10 out of 10 from Hackin on their cross-chain bridge audit. Check all this out and more on CreoEngine.com. Introducing Ridotto, gambling infrastructure that offers seamless on-chain experiences. I'm excited to announce that Ridotto is the first real GambleFi project to be listed on not just one, but two major centralized exchanges, Bitmart and MEXC. Hop on their fully decentralized platform for lotteries, casino games, and betting. No KYC, no deposits, and instant payouts. All fueled by their RDT token, enabling you to play, build your own casino games, and bankroll as the house. Check all this out and more at Ridotto.io.
And now back to your regularly scheduled program.
Are there any learnings that you can take from almost, I'll call it like the, releasing a little teaser piece, which, who knows, maybe that actually becomes one of the bigger parts of the whole ecosystem is, that, which you've already launched there. But is that informing some of the decisions you guys are making on the MMO side, on the bigger game side? Because, you ostensibly could be learning about your users through this almost trial run or like pre-alpha piece. How are you guys kind of reconciling that and gathering feedback and all that stuff?
Well, I mean, two things here. One is a lesson for anybody that's in a startup, especially in this crypto space. I would say it is imperative to ship frequently. And, what we really had to get to, and we had tons of meetings about, what is the minimum product that we can roll out that's attractive to users. And inevitably, the feature set would always get bloated. Nothing ever seemed sufficient. Like the team, we wanted the whole game out, just like the community wants a game out, we want the whole game out too. And especially in 2022, this slowed us down a lot. Like we were expecting to get a product launched in March of 2022. That product ultimately became Sage, which launched in September of 2023. And it was only because we had a lot of heart-to-heart discussions internally saying, look, if we don't get something out, we're not going to be around. So we have to figure out what is the cutoff point here to releasing an MVP product. So I think there's also a lot of advantages to doing that because the community loves to give you feedback, sometimes positive, a lot of times negative. But what we get there is the lesson on what is it exactly that our users want. They will tell you exactly what they want and what they like and what they don't like. Now you have to be able to contextualize that in your full roadmap and understand, okay, well, if they don't like this, but we actually know that feature in part 2 of our roadmap actually satisfies that issue for them. So, okay, we don't have to, it's not an emergency. We don't have to do anything with it right now. But getting those quick product releases out, getting the feedback, and just being able to iterate on it, I think not only gives you the ability to learn from it, but it also establishes credibility. I think it's one of the big concerns in crypto, and especially with anonymous founders. Now, I've always been doxxed. The whole team is doxxed and out there. But if if you take in a bunch of people's money and then you just disappear for a few months, people start to get worried, right? So, I mean, the things that we do are being highly interactive and communicative on Discord. We have a great community team. We host regular events where we're providing updates to the community. But again, if you're actually shipping product, nothing can demonstrate better that you are working and building something than by putting something in their hands. So that's been very powerful for us. The second part on Sage, and what we're doing there is kind of to my earlier comment, it is part of the same universe. When you're engaged in Sage, as we build that same environment out in Unreal Engine, you'll see the same activity taking place. And we actually announced earlier this year, I just announced it at Crossroads in Istanbul, and we're taking the step of building Sage into Unreal Engine right now. We're calling like the first version of this Fleet command. And this is probably revealing to the audience if you're not following us closely, but what's really cool about Fleet Command is it uses all of the same on-chain logic that we already have. You get the visual fidelity of AAA quality in Unreal Engine 5, but we're really transforming the MMO landscape into one where it's a hybrid between both the RTS or 4X game and the MMO. And in this case, you can do the full fleet management from a top-down perspective, where you're managing hundreds of ships, but at the same time and in the same engine in the same client through a toggle, you can go all the way down into first-person view and be walking around the interior of a singular ship that you're now commanding, and you're flying that ship and maybe engaging in dogfighting in space. And so it's really up to the player. Do you want to be managing the entire fleet? From like a unit perspective, or do you want to be the guy that's in the ship flying it around, and engaged in that first person combat with other players?
Well, as a lifelong RTS player, that's always been sort of the dream. And we've just sort of seen, I forget if it was Deliverance or Kingdom, one of those where, you're commanding up on the top, leading the troops, and then you're down hacking and slashing. So that's one that the RTS community has been begging for, and bringing that to space, I think will be quite favorably land.
Yeah, well, I mean, we're super excited about it. I mean, it has been part of the vision since the beginning, but that's just to clarify that the things that we're learning from Sage and what we're building out, it was built in browser originally because we wanted a lower barrier to entry access point for all users. We're actually looking at satisfying that through various partnerships with cloud gaming, pixel streaming, DPIN, things like this. So we're working with a couple of teams right now to see if we can just get the MMO streamed to a mobile or streamed to desktop and not have to build out in browser directly. But it was also quicker for us to build in browser at the time. And so, we were able to get that MVP out, get the traction, generate some success from that. And now we're just importing the logic into Unreal Engine 5. The good thing for us as a studio is being able to consolidate development efforts purely into UE5 now. It means we don't have separate teams that are building in browser in this engine that was it was Play Canvas was originally the 3D engine in browser. Well, now we don't have separate teams. We have everybody consolidated working on the same in the same engine, and so all of the assets that we've built for UE already work for Fleet Command, etc. So there's a lot of efficiency created by this merger of that game and Unreal Engine.
I wouldn't. Oh, go ahead, Nick.
No, after you, brother.
I'm actually going to shift the topic. So
Yeah. So
for sure.
yeah, on this topic, cloud gaming sort of been gone through iterations of popularity as far as like it as a narrative. Clearly, if you look out on a far enough timetable, there's a reason why people don't have power plants at their house. It's
Right.
just more efficient to get that tapped in. So I'd be really curious why you're having these conversations with DPIN, and if I'm understanding it, cloud streaming providers. How close is that technology? Not necessarily in Star Atlas, but just in gaming as a whole.
It's looking quite promising. I won't mention any names here, but one team in particular that we're working on is focused more on the DPIN side of this, and what that implies is they're not using data centers and data center GPUs to render and stream. The way they want to establish the network is that any of the three of us, we have a gaming PC, or Nick, you're on the road right now. Your PC's probably at home. Well, activate that on the network and let it stream to someone that is nearby, and now you're picking up revenue by outsourcing your machine to them. That part I think is going to be one of the bigger challenges. So what they've completed so far and demonstrated to us is the algorithm that it actually works, and it works quite well at 60 FPS and full HD. I think they were showcasing 1080p, which is still pretty good. We're not talking 4K, but 1080 is great at 60 FPS. So they're showing that that side of the tech is working. Where I think they'll face some challenges is you have to, how do you get this network going? Again, the cold start problem, because you want the users, but you can't really get the users if you don't have the infrastructure. And if you don't have the users, it's a hard sell to the infrastructure because they're not earning anything if the users aren't there. But the fact that the tech itself works is really promising to me. So I would argue we're pretty close. I mean, I think we could see something substantive within the next 6 months. If I was being very conservative, I'd say 1 year. And this is super powerful, just to unlock global access to Star Atlas MMO for every single person around the world. That's huge. It's huge. So we're putting a lot of thought into this right now. We are working with 3 different teams who have 3 different implementations on how it could work, and one of them is focused more on the cloud side, data center infrastructure. All of these have different costs associated with them too, so we've got to kind of factor for that. But yeah, I just think the upside is absolutely massive, because I don't want to. I keep going back to the economy. It's one of the things I'm really passionate about. But I think about Star Atlas as being this global, borderless economy, accessible to anyone around the world. There are labor market opportunities that will exist in Star Atlas, and the example I use a lot is just somebody who maybe establishes great skill in being a pilot of a ship in the game. Well, you might hire that person to actually transport goods for you across the map, or go through a risky high risk zone, because that player knows the routes and knows how to navigate in and out of there without losing the ship or losing the cargo. So the idea that you could be employed as a pilot on a digital spaceship in Star Atlas is a little bit absurd, but not unrealistic.
So I want to kind of scope out a little bit, because we are getting relatively close to time here. Where now in the cycle do you think we are? Last time, kind of got a little taste of that. But we just, as of the recording of this, just had the big debates between the 2 presidential candidates in the U.S. Things are kind of going crazy in crypto land. We've had a series of red days. I think people are kind of feeling the pain a little bit. The SEC's kind of going off doing their own thing. People are suing everybody, Coinbase and the SEC, and Consensus and the SEC, and all these things are going on. Where are you at with everything? What's your take on what's going on in the world these days, and how does that affect crypto gaming specifically?
Well, I think we're definitely in a new era. I will say things have gotten a bit boring. The end of last year was great. It was earlier than expected, but it was coincidentally right around the time that we were at Breakpoint in Amsterdam last year. Solana started blowing up. We started blowing up and seeing some really positive movements in tokens and revenues and asset purchases across our ecosystem. Things have certainly slowed down, since the beginning of the year. So Q4 last year was nice, unexpected, but nice. Where we're at right now, I think, is probably fairly consistent with previous 4-year cycles. Everybody expects Bitcoin to blow up right after a halving, but if you look at the charts, it's always like trailing into Q3, maybe even Q4 before you really start to see momentum. And then it's the next year that you see that parabolic move in Bitcoin. So my expectations are that we'll see much bigger price movement in Q4 this year, and then also going into next year. But I say it's a new era because the legitimacy of these markets has never been better. You've got the Bitcoin ETFs that all launched at the beginning of the year. ETH ETF is probably coming. Van Eck just filed for a Solana ETF. We don't know if and when that's going to happen or if it'll get approved, but the fact of the matter is we're seeing not only institutional, but institutional level retail capital coming into these markets. The fact that crypto is such a hot issue in the debates, and it's like creating this losing the word here, but it's so heavily debated between the two parties in the US. I never thought that would have been the case, and it's like the number one thing that is differentiating Republicans from Democrats, and just seeing how polarizing that has been. Well, I think it's a real positive for the long-term potential of crypto, because again, you get into things like having regulatory certainty around how to operate in this industry. That's a positive. It's a real positive for business operators like myself, where we chatted on this a little bit right before the call started, but uncertainty and gray area, it has its benefits, where we can kind of do some things that we think are right, and without having to go through all of the bureaucracy and paperwork that regulation brings. But at the same time, that bureaucracy and paperwork, and knowing that we're regulatorily compliant with the system and we're not going to get sued just because we're trying to innovate here, well, that is huge for certainty for us in how we build our business going into the future. But I just think all of the catalysts are in place, between the capital flows, the ETFs, the awareness, the political debating that's going on right now, and support that is ultimately creating for crypto. I think we're really going to break from the traditional 4-year cycle, where it was, like we just talked about, going into the parabolic year, and then you have 2 years of down markets. What I think is going to happen is, if we do have down markets, it's going to be significantly dampened, because the type of money that's coming into it right now is not that short-term speculative mentality necessarily. You're talking about individuals buying the ETFs, or pension funds buying ETFs, or like long-term minded investors getting into it, that won't be spooked by volatility in the near term. They're buying and holding, right? So I think we're going to see a dampening on the downside. The drawdowns will be smaller, and we might just see an extended continuation of a bull market going into the future.
Nick, what do you think? I know you're a macro Rain Man in the sense of being brilliant with it.
I appreciate the clarification, Ben. So first off, on the economic nerd point, at one point when we were talking about all of these workers working in the metaverse, combating ships and such, just made me think, I'm like, how is the Fed going to keep track of the labor market when it's completely inside of the metaverse? If you're flying that ship from, South Korea, is that a South Korean worker, even though they're located? It's going to lead to this entirely new way of distributing, which is already disseminating what's already a very foggy data point. But more to the meat of the question, my original sort of like hypothesis going into this is that, from my reading of the macro, is that we might get a blow off top at the end of 2024. My big sort of indicator on that is inflation. Right now, we're following what could look like a very 1970s like inflationary path, where if you look at that original chart, they had this huge spike in the early 70s, and then it came almost all the way back down before making a higher high, and then it continued that into the oil shock crisis and such. So in a election year, it's extremely difficult to slay the dragon that is inflation, because austerity could be the farthest thing from the American taxpayer and voters' mind, even if that's what they say. You've got two candidates that are going to sound completely different, but the punchline is going to be very similar. They're going to blow up sort of the budget deficit even wider. It's just going to be interesting to see. I mean, I completely agree on the institutional investors coming in with a long-term perspective. They tend to be much more tax efficient than our traditional sort of like degens, where they are trying to get to that long-term gains, especially the ones based in the US system. So I think we got these beautiful green lights going into the end of last year where it's just so clearly party time. Where we're at right now, to quote sort of Darius Dale, who's one of my favorite sources for macro, the model distribution for outcomes is so flat. There are a chance that we could go into recession. There's a real chance that we could shrug this off and continue stagflation's on the table. So, there were times for certainty when investing. This is sort of an uncertain time. We're in new charted waters. So, I'd hate to say anything confidently because right now I'm not. So I'm really looking more onto either playing very short term or those long term plays where I'm like, hey, I believe in this, whether it be Bitcoin or favorite games or a certain piece of technology or DPIN, where I'm like, okay, I'm okay holding through this volatility because I think at the end of the day it's up and to the right because the dollar is down and to the right. So that's sort of my overall sort of take. So no clear answers, but a little bit of the thinking that I've got going on the subject.
And for everyone out there that's been waiting for somebody to just come out and say it, I'm super fucking bullish and we're totally going up and to the right. Just give us a little bit of time. So I know there was a large section of you just waiting for it. So there it is for you. And that's truly what I believe.
I hesitate to share this, but I've been opening degen leverage long positions on Bitcoin.
Let's go.
Yeah. I got in, I got out, fortunately, before we had the big before we had the recent sell-off, and I'm targeting some re-entries soon. But I don't know that we'll have the blow off top in Q4 of this year. I think that's a a bold statement. Would love to see it, but also hope it continues, though. That's the only thing, is I'd like to see this thing run for another year plus.
Same here. And while we're sharing bullish sentiments, I have been, with all that being said, accumulating Bitcoin and ETH and Sol and some of the top, like sort of like L1s where, when you get these 80% retraces, not on the top guys, obviously, but on some of the lower guys and some real dips in Bitcoin. Yeah, it was too tempting for me to pass up on. And I was like, we break this range and go down to 40. So I'm talking out of both sides of my mouth. That's how I've been investing a little bit lately, but trying to make sure that if things blow up, I get to keep playing. And if they go up and to the right, I'm going to be kicking myself that I didn't buy more, but that's crypto.
Michael, how much leverage do you put on your positions? Are you 1000x longing, 100x longing?
No, I'm way far more conservative than that. I'm typically less than 5x. I might float in the 2x range, 2x to 3x range. And this is all on the personal side. I do want to qualify that. I'm not playing around with corporate assets in any way. This is all my my personal finances here. But yeah, 2 to 3x is typical. If that starts to hit, what I would will do is extend that leverage out. So if I'm in the money on a trade, then I will start, and I think that we're going to see continuation, then I'll start to stack up the leverage a little bit more. But I'm definitely not the 100x degen out there. I did that a few times on BitMEX and got absolutely wrecked. So not anymore.
Yeah, it's very tempting to just take that slider and go all the way to the right. Let's see what what they'll let you do. Then clicking the buttons might not be the best idea at that point in time. Yeah. But I'm glad I'm glad we can talk about the fun degen stuff we do. I've been really enjoying some like on-chain farming and just experimenting with that and playing with that more. And then take a little bit of profits on your stable coins from your farming activities. There's nothing wrong with tossing that into a 20x, 30x, 1000x long every once and again, just to see what happens. No, but I definitely appreciate you talking about it, because everybody has a little bit of a degen inside of them, and I think it's so much fun to, like, with a very responsible, teeny tiny amount, just go and get that out of your system and just like, let that happen. Because otherwise, you might have that thing of like, oh man, I could have, but what if but maybe I should have. But if you just get that out of your system, I actually find that can be pretty cathartic, and like, you're going to lose the money, but at least you tried. You're like, okay, good. Now I don't have to worry about that anymore.
Ben's got the house money fallacy. Made a little money over here farming. I'll toss it into a degen trade. Why
Or
not?
reinvest most of it, but then take a little piece of it and go hit your moonshots with it. So you're still compounding, just slightly slower, but with the chance of upside. He said rationalizing his degen behavior.
And one of my favorite points of leverage in the space for some of the audience who might not have the capital to sort of responsibly lever long is get crazy leverage on your time. There's so many projects that need help with marketing, dev, you really name it. I mean, you could be a mod. Like there's so many low hanging fruits for the people who are starting to acquire skills in the space. Often projects are more than generous when their own token, as opposed to maybe some of the traditional funds or companies with USD. So I think there's some really good opportunities to get some, I'll call them sweat tokens. And, you can let those ride. You don't have to worry about that being your rent money. So for the people who might not have the ability to mess around with leverage, that's a good way to get a little leverage out of your sweat.
Absolutely.
100%. Gentlemen, this has been a lot of fun. Michael, thank you as always for coming on to the pod. As I mentioned before, you're a dear friend of the pod. Would love to have you on anytime. I know you guys have a very big, very, very big town hall coming up soon. So best of luck with that. And I hope your Atlassians all, get to go to Valhalla alongside of you relatively soon.
Likewise. Wait, don't you die before you go to Valhalla?
Oh. Maybe you're just so overjoyed that your inner bear dies and goes to Valhalla, and that's.
Yeah. I appreciate the sentiment. Hopefully we all go to the promised land for sure. But yeah, the town hall is July 3rd, which should be tomorrow from when this plays. So join us in Discord. We have a ton of huge announcements, big updates to the roadmap, big updates to activations, events, conferences. It's a must see if you're interested at all in Star Atlas. So thanks, guys. Always great to be on with you. Appreciate the time as always.
You're the man. Appreciate you, Nick, Mr. Crypto Atheist, the legend. As always, thank you very much for everything you do, sir.
Oh, my absolute pleasure. Always great to be talking some crypto gaming, especially we're the exciting place that we're at. Michael, thank you again for joining us. Big thank you to the audience for joining us. Definitely catch that town hall. Wishing you all luck in your relative or your respective degenning. And this has been Neo Tokyo Interlinked. We'll see you on the next episode.
And for those who get the shout out to the homies. See you next time.
Shout out to the homies.
Crypto Unicorns is available to play now on their website, and their Play to Airdrop campaign just kicked off on July 1st. Players can now earn daily Xi rewards just by playing the game. Try it out for yourself and breed, battle, and collect your favorite unicorns, all while earning your slice of the Xi pie. This is not an opportunity to miss, so hop onto their website, www.cryptounicorns.fun, and try it out for yourself.